say, I don't know. We live in the future. This is so weird. I'm just picturing like 8-year-old me trying to explain what I do every day to them. Just be like, but there's still no moon base?
Self-driving cars don't work.
Glass half empty, huh?
Yeah. I really thought I was going to be too old to be the first person to go to Mars. Now are too young. I felt like they were going to get to Mars before I got old enough. So I was too young. And now I'm too old to be the first person to Mars. That's messed up.
That's crazy.
Okay, we're not. Yes, so we're recording now. Okay, so Michelle, what's up with you?
We got the reload stuff in for AL Kiln. Thanks, Bryce. That was a good review, and we will cross our fingers. There's no real great way to test because a lot of it is asynchronous and happenstance. So testing it thoroughly is pretty, we did what we could. Other than that, I've been working on the form fixer forms, which I think my latest question is, what do we do about choices? Are we naming the fields of the field labels of the choices themselves, or just the ones that contain the choices? We can't hear you, David.
It would help if I unmuted. I think the answer is whatever. Well, the answer always is whatever we do normally with choices. But I also think the answer is probably it's low priority because I'm not sure we do anything that the machine will be able to deal with. Bryce, do you recall what our
So what do you mean by choices, Michelle? Like what is the PDF book?
Radio. I don't think we do radio buttons.
No, we don't do them at all. So
that's a no.
So part of the thing is that I'm running into a lot of duplicate fields, which crashes Adobe.
Yeah.
So I've been taking things through Documate, but I suspect Documate will change fields, like if there are weird drop-down fields.
When you say you've been running into a lot of duplicate fields, you've been running into a lot of fields that in
duplicate labels.
They already had duplicate labels inside.
Yeah, we fixed that already, David.
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay.
Well, I found ones that had duplicate labels.
Could you shoot me a message with those so that I can see what tranche of documents they came from?
I can
I just need
to remember.
Yeah, just one or so.
Like 93. They were in the 90s.
Okay. So I don't think any of our tools should have been giving them.
Oh wait, no, but it's because these are were these our tools?
It was a combination of our tools and other. It's what we scraped, and so the only R tool would have only been your reader. The only tool that's processed.
Yeah, so the only tool that would have processed is if it didn't already have fields. So if it did have fields, they could have duplicated labeled.
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
That's quite possible.
And so
in that case, why do you need to? Well, I guess you need to run it through Documate just to rename them in the first place, right?
Yeah, I've just been doing them in Documate instead, but I suspect that it might change fields, like getting rid of
obviously the original fields would have been. They just stay the same. It's in when you're relabeling them. You would have labeled them so they wouldn't be duplicate anyway. Michelle, if I understood, it's just that the issue was you can't open it because.
I can open them. It crashes whenever I try and rename the labels. What I'm saying is, I believe Documate will turn radio button fields and drop downs and things like that into regular text fields, and so I don't know if it matters that.
Our general practice, the proper practice, if we're just labeling these under normal, is to get rid of radio buttons, turn them into checkboxes, and then name them accordingly.
Yeah, I feel like the weird thing about this is that we're not doing proper practice because it's not what the our tools can actually handle in terms of the machine learning stuff, right? Because
our fields, we'll be able to deal with. That's the problem, is that our our tool won't be able to, that's why my original answer was, we do whatever we would normally do, but I think in reality, it's low priority because I don't think our tools will be able to deal with it, which is to say that what we normally do is useful for prepping it up for a person and then be able to go and deal with that. But we don't have a good way yet for the ML tool to say, oh, look, this new field that we have here is the same as that old field that you just deleted. So we can't do that. We can say this field's name has changed.
Which is why I'm saying that putting it through Documate may destroy some of those fields or remake some of those fields.
Yeah, and I'm saying that's and so my fallback is do what we would normally do, which would be remove radio buttons, replace them with checkboxes. But that's not something that's not a super high priority because our ML tools aren't gonna spot those at this stage. But we should just label things the way we would normally label them. So
but I never label radio buttons.
Yeah, it's because you don't.
There's duplicate fields.
You delete the radio buttons and you replace them with checkboxes. In duplicate fields, you append the number on the end, the double underscore number.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we're doing that for fields that are non-duplicate fields as well, right? Like that was the instruction.
I think
last time.
I think the instruction I mean, we can always
let me give you the specific. Let me give you the specific situation.
Okay, specific situation.
Specific situation is that there's a text area, but instead the thing is given it multiple single lines.
Yes.
And you said to put the duplicate field indicator on them, but they're not really a duplicate field. Like that's not what I would call a duplicate field if I were labeling the
but that
thing for the Weaver.
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm just saying
with if you were doing it for the Weaver, you would obviously remove all the extras, turn it into a text area, and make it fit the size.
But we're not doing that.
No, we're not doing.
So sometimes we are doing what we usually do, and sometimes we're not, and that's why I'm asking.
I suppose that's true.
Okay. So in this case, I just let Documate do whatever it wants with it, and I change the label to whatever is appropriate.
Okay. If the case is, in this case, by this case you mean when there are radio buttons, then I would say it's not something we really. No, Abigail, we're recording right now.
Or drop downs.
I'm sorry, say again.
Or drop downs.
Or drop downs, yes. Those would be ones we would have turned into text.
Okay, so I just put that to that.
So yeah,
so I might edit them all in Documate.
I'm going to countermand what I said to make it more consistent with my original instruction,
okay.
Which is don't delete or remove anything, just give them appropriate names, which is what we did with the text fields. So you don't have
but
to.
But I can't do that with radio.
Yeah.
All
so
radio
then just
fields.
just ignore radio buttons.
Don't delete them.
Ignore them or.
This is particularly so for the context for everyone, so they understand and don't get the wrong idea. This is only for the process. This labeling is for the process of having our ML tools be able to recognize, to try to auto name things. And so our ML tools will not be able to, if we take a field and remove it and replace it with some other field, we won't then anymore know that this was an old field and now it's a new field. All we can handle is, here is a field that existed in both. Its name was this at one time. Now its name is this. So,
so if I leave radio button fields as they are, do I rename the choices? Is one question.
Have to.
Huh?
You do not have to.
Okay. Secondly, if the form has duplicate fields,
then you still treat it like duplicate fields.
But I can't, no. If the form has duplicate labels, if it comes with duplicate labels and it crashes my Adobe and I need to use Documate.
That's a thing that we could, that's a thing that we could try to extra process of just like, even if we get it from the original source, go through and make sure it doesn't have any duplicate things because that feels like it'll cause issues anyway.
Yeah, we do something where we, I think we might deal with some of that in some cases, but So just so I understand the problem is that the existing form with its label has duplicate fields that someone erroneously
Duplicate
labeled.
labels, yeah.
Duplicate labels that were erroneously labeled, and so therefore cause Adobe to crash. And so it makes it difficult for you then to change them to new fields without first somehow nuking the field names.
It nuking the fields, like I would have to delete the fields and put in new fields.
Is it only when you try to rename that particular field, or is
Yeah.
it like you try and rename other fields?
The particular field that has the duplicate name.
Just not. I guess that's not the best because it's putting in probably garbage labels back into our stuff. But like, just avoid it for now until we have a thing that
Yeah.
goes through and is smarter than Adobe and cannot crash and properly rename them. Which is we have all of the libraries to do that. It's just a matter of actually running each PDF through.
My guess is that these are some court labeled forms that someone went in and erroneously named with the same, not knowing that Adobe has this problem or this limitation.
I think because I don't remember what fields, what files had the duplicates. Like I don't know if they had.
So we'll go back to the main thing is, so let's make this simple. The main thing is we want to work with forms where we can take fields that existed and just rename them. If there's any other intervention that's required, like making a new field or deleting an old field and replacing a new field or doing some workaround like that, we should just not make labels for that. So that one just shouldn't get manually labeled.
So that shouldn't be processed at all.
Yeah, we just won't. It'll still exist there in the like original ones, but there won't be a human labeled one. And so that still means that when you have a text area, you still do the, treat it like a duplicate field because all you're doing there is changing the names of existing fields. But if you have to do anything that would alter the number of fields or remove a field and add a field, then it's a no because it's not the same field anymore and we won't be able to do anything with it. And so it's better to exclude those poor cases from our training set than it is, as Bryce said, to go in there and rename it with something that's, a garbage name to a garbage name, because then it'll learn on the garbage name. And that would be bad. Or suboptimal. Bad is a strong word.
Should we just wait till they've all been deduplicated? Or should we like label somehow the ones that should not be edited and should not be included in the data set?
If it's in your, well, they will naturally not be included in the data set as long as there's not a human labeled one in the human labeled folder.
I see.
So whatever bookkeeping is necessary to prevent those who are labeling from having to go in and be like, oh, I'm starting to label this one. Oh, I can see this one wasn't labeled because it shouldn't have been labeled. Then we should do that. But if people are already claiming, right now this is mostly you, but if you're, if you've claimed this tranche from 90 to 95, and you go through and you do all the ones that are in there, and only 3 of them make it into the human labeled, but you say that tranche is done, that should be sufficient to say we don't have to revisit that tranche.
Okay. All right. This may end up. I may end up having to redo a lot of the ones that I've done. I don't know.
You shouldn't have to redo any of them. You might have to abandon some.
Well, but I don't know which ones have the duplicate fields. Like I'm going to have to go through and look at which ones have the duplicate fields, and I don't know which ones I use Documate for instead, which Documate may be a problem because it may be replacing all the fields already. It's unclear to me how it does what it does. And that also means, by the way, that people editing the fields, say it's students or something, they shouldn't use Documate because it will probably get rid of radio button fields. I can try it with one that has radio buttons and drop downs and see what happens, but it might be replacing them anyway.
Well, for students, I think that would be appropriate because we don't want radio buttons. And also for students,
to leave the radio buttons as it.
I did, but that's not for, okay, I'm sorry. When you said students, I thought you meant students doing it under the normal process. You meant students who were doing any
for
of the
machine
labeling.
learning.
Right now, I think anyone who's doing machine learning is on this call. So I think that
Okay.
it has been, we've covered that. So
Okay.
yeah, so the key is if you have to do anything but change the names of the fields, don't process the form.
Okay.
But if you can process the form by changing the names of the fields, then that is, use that, that form's fine to go through.
Okay.
All right, anything else?
No, I think that's it.
And I wanted to say thank you for, I saw you were going through a bunch of these, and so that's very helpful. So I look forward to being able to feed this in and see what results we get.
Well, don't feed it in yet because I have to redo
I won't feed it in
them,
yet.
but-
I'll wait.
But yeah, you're welcome. All right.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, Hayden.
Alrighty, so I have been working on the worksheet this week. It's really wrapped up at this point in terms of math and the backside. There are questions that I don't like how I phrase them still, and some questions that I think I can ditch because of earlier answers that we'll get. I am setting up a meeting with David and Kristen next week to do a demo for the courts. Caroline, if you want to come to that to see it, you're welcome to, or weigh in on anything.
Have you already scheduled it, Hayden?
We haven't. It'll be sometime Wednesday to Friday next week,
Okay.
after 12:30.
12? Yeah, okay.
So early for you.
It'll be early for you. Yeah. We could do it later in the
Well,
day. not
after 12:30 is good actually, because it means
That's
it's not
fine.
super
Yeah,
early.
that's my, yeah. It's not like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
If it was before 12:30, then we're starting to.
But yeah, so it's pretty much wrapped up. I mean, I can do a demo of it now if you guys want to see it. I can. There are some accessibility questions that I know I want to change, so we could wait if you want. Up to David.
I would love to see a little something, but let's get
Yeah.
through the rest of the
Everything.
reports, and then we'll loop back.
Perfect. Yep.
Bryce. Oh, anything else, Hayden?
No, that's good. We can leave it there.
All right, Bryce.
I'm completely blanking on what all I did this week.
I don't know. There was a big sigh, so I'm
Sure you
guessing a
did
lot.
something. I've been seeing a lot of GitHub posts.
Yeah, I've just been a lot of merging and pushing stuff. I think I have the appeals interview, the motion to stay eviction in a good place. It's not like polished, but I went through and sort of added a whole bunch of features and things that have needed to be added for it to sort of actually work and look nice. So that's all in, and I need to go through and do another sort of a round of polishing probably. And I spent probably too long this morning trying to get get things working on the e-filing side with Texas better, which specifically the problem there was just there are so many courts in Texas that it takes hours upon hours to download all of said courts, and so I've just been trying to speed up that process, and I am running into silly Java issues that don't make any sense. But I might be making some progress there. We'll see. The big thing that I did actually do was I ended up on I think last week I had found that DocAssembly's sort of default combo box was actively not accessible. I think I described this. I described this on the back end call, but the short context here was that it's for like it doesn't really do anything with a screen reader, and so if you're using a screen reader, at best it's the same as just a text field, and at worst it's worse than a text field because everything about it and says select the default or the ghost text and the field says make a selection, and everything else reads selection, but there's nothing you can actually do with the screen reader that shows this is what this is how you select things. And so I sort of found that and then took a shot and I'm fairly certain that it's is done and is accessible. I just have a big long list of tests that I want to go through on different browsers and such to make sure that it's accessible. But I've now got it, so at least it's screen reading, does all the screen reading parts out, doesn't have weird confusing things on drop downs with keyboard controls, and so it all just works.
Bryce,
And
are you testing? Are you using a particular? I mean, you're doing it not a machine test, but you actually have a screen reader and you're.
I actually have a screen reader for this. Yeah,
But are you using JAWS or are you using something else?
So I use a combination of NVDA, which is the free one on Windows. I know JAWS. I've heard a lot of people do use JAWS, but I just don't have.
Yeah.
I actually don't know how much it is, but I assume it's at least a decent
It's
amount.
costly, yeah.
Yeah, and so I haven't tried, but I do at least in NVDA works pretty well. I've used a combination of that and the Linux one, which is horrible. But that's sort of just easier if I can make sure. Oh yeah, it'll do something there, and then do an actual test on my laptop. So
what about you probably have an Android, not an iPhone, right?
Yeah, so I'm that's one of the things I want to test is like iPhones. I was just now like I was trying to come up with a good way to actually do some like actual web testing, and it kind of worked. It's really confusing with like Chrome. You can remote debug instances, so I had to set that up. But I have access to iPhones, i.e., my fiance has an iPhone,
Right.
and so I just borrow it. And I also borrow her Mac if I want to sort of try those out. And so those are sort of just on my list of like I want to go through and see, okay, does it work on iPhone with the voiceover, and does it work on Mac with the voiceover? Because I also haven't run through the screen reader setup stuff on mobile yet. But I do know that's sort of an important thing for this.
Right.
So I want to make sure. Yeah. So that's why I have.
Considering 75% of our users are on the phone.
Oh yeah. It's like I have all of this in and ready, and I've tested it and made sure it sort of works on mobile and does it like you can actually interact with it. But there's just a big long things of like, okay, we need to test this combination on this browser on this phone with the screen reader, without the screen reader, and like doing just taps, doing keyboard controls, etc. So
yeah, I mean the reason I was asking is partly because those are our, I don't know whether it's. I mean, you guys can tell whether the mobile phone users what platform they're using, what operating system they're using, right? But on the iPhones, of course, and I'm sure they do on Androids as well, they have this accessibility feature that so people they're not buying screen readers, that it's already built in.
Yes.
So, that's why I was asking about that.
No, yeah, it's definitely, thank you for asking. It's definitely a good thing to keep in mind. And where else was I going to go with that? I don't know. But yeah, that's sort of where it is. I was going to say, until then, we like at least discussed it, and like, yeah, there's no good drop-in replacement for a combo box, so it doesn't make sense to try and go through a bunch of old interviews, change them, like fix them to not use a combo box, and then break them in other ways, because it's a sort of not just you can change a line, you have to change several lines and interview logic and such. So don't use combo boxes until this is in, it's not in, and it probably won't be in for at least a few weeks or so.
And this is basic DocAssembly. I mean, it's not as if it's not our version of DocAssembly with our CSS.
Yes.
This is an issue with DocAssembly.
Yes, and it's not a CSS thing that you can change. It's a
right.
It's like a whole Bootstrap plugin that Jonathan forked a while back and has been using. And it's not like the current version of the plugin ever got any other accessibility updates. So
okay,
it's just how it is. But yeah, so at least the advice is just don't use combo boxes until this is merged.
Good advice.
But we're also not really going to change any other interviews, and just try to get it fixed as soon as we can on DocAssembly side.
We don't actually use them very much, do we? Anyway,
we don't use them a ton. It looked like when we did a search, and there was at least a few interviews. We use them in the 209A.
we do.
It's like there was some. There was some question.
Information, I bet it is.
I think so. There was like some question that we asked that it was copied around in a few other interviews too. But yeah, it's like nothing in the Weaver spits out combo boxes. You have to know that it exists in DocAssembly and use it, which is like limited to 5 or so people who would be writing new interviews.
That's fascinating.
All right. Well, good find. That's, I mean, it
You're
means
so
that
good at this stuff, Bryce.
it means that
I'm just so impressed.
Thanks.
means the testing we've been doing and the stuff we've been putting, that our priorities they're paying off. So that's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at least the one thing, it wasn't actually found by that. It was found because like the button didn't have a label or something. And so just because the button didn't happen to have a label, I went in and looked at it and I was like, oh, this isn't, nothing happens with the screen reader anyway. But like we don't actually check that. And so I do think it's one of those things of the automation helped, but it wasn't actually the thing that could tell us, oh, this is completely broken.
Well, it helped though. So that's
it does help, yeah.
That's you can expect it to figure everything out, but our people are. And that's really the important thing, that we've set our priorities and we have things we're looking for and we're catching them, and that's good.
Yeah.
Cool. So that went from like can't remember what I did to like I did 100 large project
50
things.
wonderful things.
So it wasn't I can't remember. It was an overload of too
Yeah.
many things.
It's just so worn
Yeah,
out.
It's all a blur.
His mind's been focused on doing this stuff. He can't be accountable for what he did.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's why we have lists. That's why we have the context for other folks. The appeals court stuff I was talking about. We're hoping to queue that up so that it'll be all ready to. So we will have done some good sandbox testing by next week, assuming we get stuff back from our court folks, which they may or may not have gotten back to us yet with. I don't think Paul hasn't given you those edge cases yet or those scenarios.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah. So that might not happen until after he gets back from vacation, then, is my guess, because he's probably doing everything he can to get ready for vacation.
Yep.
And when he gets back, we'll grab all that. But that's fine. It was an ambitious thing, but we can do what we do. But the point is, everyone, we're very close to maybe going live with true e-filing in Massachusetts, which is very exciting. So it's only been a month away for the past 6 months.
Well, 209A was like that too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Although that was only 3 months.
Was it?
So it was a week away for 3 months. So it's still
Similar.
a big improvement on like the 4 years that I think other jurisdictions took to do the same work. So so well done, us. All right, Caroline.
So well, I want to not record something. So
All right,
maybe I
well,
should
we'll
go
have,
last.
we'll wait till some other venue. But is there anything you want to share with the group right now?
I'm still waiting for the developer, or the developers came back with a bid, not a bid, a quote. I mean, they are our developers. So they came back with a quote for embedding the,
They came back with a quote for taking an iframe and putting a URL in it.
except I think it's not an iframe. I think it's something different.
Okay,
'Cause
well, that's
Jonathan was saying iframes don't work.
Yeah, that's iframes can be
It's
tough.
pretty hefty, and they took out something. And what I was going to ask you is, what I don't understand, what is the email user session? Is that a thing? Does that mean anything to you guys? Because otherwise, I'll go back into the proposal and look at what that means. But email resume session, I think that's what it is. And I don't quite understand what that even is. Does that mean that if somebody, they have a button that they say, I'm going to stop now, email me? And
Well, you can email at this, your progress at this point to the form, but that's just an email to the form as, that's just the same as the share form at this stage.
So when you say email to the form, what does that mean?
Email, I meant email this form to someone, right?
Oh, right.
Right.
Okay.
So like it keeps it keeps the state of the form somewhere, and then you can you can either email or text or some way get that session information to someone, and then they can pick it up where you left off.
So to implement that, how much work would that be to do that? Or that's just part of the thing as long as you have email set up?
I think that's part of that's just part of DocAssembly, right? Don't we?
Well, you have
It's the same way you share things.
You have to say multi-user true. I mean,
Yeah.
there's configurations,
There's
but once you've configured it,
But Michelle, how long would it take to configure your configuration?
What you're doing
You
in
have to
5
set up
minutes.
your.
yeah, it's
Sorry,
quick.
Bryce.
if you know what the configuration is, i.e., you like look at our servers that have it up already, it would take 5 minutes. It's just a matter of
That's what I thought.
I think multi users per interview, and then it's just a matter of setting up the emails on the actual server. It's the email stuff on the server itself with just
It's
sending
like
the
the email account and who it is and that when you say set up the email stuff on the server.
No, so it's not an email account. It will essentially lets the server talk to another email server, which is like if
like SendGrid, you mean?
yeah, like setting up SendGrid or like SMTP or something like that would be a lot more complicated, but IT people might know how to do that better.
Right.
I wouldn't know how to do the whole setup, just the
I mean, I did it with
so.
I did it with Quentin on our Mass Legal Help one. And obviously you need an email account somewhere, right? In order to send it. And that would be on us. That wouldn't be the developer, because we'd have to have an account, and we'd have to have either, if it were whatever it is, whatever it is. What is our thing? courts.alaska.gov. It'd have to be akcourts.gov or something. So we'd have to get either SMTP from the IT people at the court, or we would just have a different email, like, I wonder if we could have, our subdomain, something like that. So I think it's docassemble.akcourts.gov or something like that. And then an email, and then it still would have to be court SMTP if that's the subdomain, right? If that's what we want to say, if it's right.
I think so. I'm not super familiar with SMTP stuff, but that sounds right. At least of like, if you're trying to send it from the court's email, it would have to go through that somehow, probably.
Right, and so you'd have to set that up on SendGrid. Right, or it would go
or whatever mail system you're using. If
it's SMTP, it would go straight to whatever email servers the court uses.
Right.
And it's just a matter of setting up those email servers to know, or setting up those servers such that you have access from.
Right. Okay, so I'll stop my questions now.
All right.
Well, come back later.
I was curious to see Hayden's, but if you have if folks have a little time before we go
I'd definitely like to see Hayden's.
Yeah.
Michelle had a question about the field ID. Do you want to do that before we?
I think was it a question, or had you figured out a way to do it and that's how you were going to check?
No, it was a question of how do you get the underlying field ID so I can check whether it'd be a much easier way to check than just trying to check everything by hand and trying to remember or redoing everything. So their way
sounds to me like the situation with the duplicate fields would be if you opened it up and it crashed, you shouldn't have used that one.
No, you have to try to edit the labels, so you need to scour the labels to see if there are duplicate labels, which they're not always in alphabetical order. But
well, just opening it in Document, does it show you the list? Doesn't it show you the list of existing labels?
Yes, but it makes them non-duplicated.
It will automatically non-duplicate them when it reads it in.
Yep. So, but I've done 10 forms, 12 forms, something or other. I'd love to be able to see this form was not one where you replaced fields. So this one's okay. You can just keep it in there. And this one is when you were.
Well, when did you?
I mean, you document, right?
Yeah, your process. When did you replace fields?
I don't remember which forms I replaced. I didn't replace fields. If anything, replaced fields. Document replaced fields, but I don't know which ones I didn't document. So I'd like to see whether those fields were replaced.
Are you just worried that the way Document operates is that it might take the fields that exist there, replace them with new fields, and give them the same names as before?
Yeah.
That shouldn't be an issue as long as it did not create a new number of fields. So if it was the same number and type of fields, and all it did was sort of like
I don't know if it was the same type because I didn't see if they were drop downs before I put them in. I don't remember if they were drop downs before I put them in Document. Okay, I can just check by hand if there isn't a way to check the IDs of fields.
I don't know a way.
Because that's what I assumed your program would be doing, is checking the underlying IDs of fields to see if they matched, to see which ones match.
What's an ID of a field versus?
I was just about to ask. I don't actually think that there is like an ID. The ID is the thing that we're naming it usually,
Yeah.
and then there's sometimes there's a
how is the
username.
ML thing going
The
to?
ML looks for, it says, here's the form. It has 10 fields. Here's another form. It has 10 fields. The first field in the form was called this originally. The first field in the form after being labeled was called something else. I'm going to try to learn.
So as long as the fields are in the same order.
Fields are in the same order.
Even if it, but I guess when it's a radio.
They would still need to be the same type, right? Like I think if you took a radio button and then replaced it with a checkbox, that wouldn't work, because when I say this form has 5 fields, I don't think it can read the radio buttons. So it really sees, the number of fields there minus the radio buttons. And so by removing the radio buttons and adding in something that it can see, you have effectively changed the number of fields that it can see.
Okay, so there's no like super easy way to do this. Okay. All right. That's it. Moving on. Cool.
All right. Hayden.
Yep. Let me just get the share going. All righty. This is coming through, right?
Yep.
It's all shared. Okay, so yeah, this is the worksheet. This is the sort of the flow of it. This is where there's some questions that I'm going to want to change around. There are ways to auto-assign values at this point that I haven't put in yet. Pretty much, because the parents need to be assigned to or the kids need to be assigned to certain parents. And at this point, we know all the assignment, but the next question is going to ask for it. So we can get rid of this whole question. I think in almost every instance that someone's going to go through the field, there's one time when they're going to need to tell us where the kids live, like specifically, but that should be very easy to set up.
That's good. Yeah, you have the logic, and if you don't need to ask, you don't need to ask.
Yeah. And it was just sort of at the end, I noticed, I was like, oh, there's like 8 questions that we can sort of ditch. These social security questions too.
That's good. It's good to get rid of. Yeah, that's simplifying the complexities or helping navigate the complexity.
These can stay 0 for this. And that's the whole thing. So I didn't really talk us through it, but it's gathering some financial information and status of where the kids live is the gist of it.
So basically it's getting the info from like that first page or
the first. Yeah. So it would be this page is the gather. And then it prints out all this.
That's the calculations page. Wow.
Yeah. And
that's
this
so
one,
cool, Hayden.
And I think it was this value right now is like I set to a static value because I was having some trouble with this portion of it. There's just some recalculations that I'll have to set it up to do. But I just wanted to get something that was working that I could show y'all.
That's really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. So now we just need to go through,
amazing.
make sure all the math's good. I'd run through with a couple scenarios, even though you can. I would check the code visually first and just run through the math, but then give yourself a couple scenarios with maybe some edge cases to run through and make sure that it's behaving the way you think. That's the one problem when testing and throwing zeros in is you don't know which 0 was where. But if you come up with some scenarios, you'll maybe discover some stuff. Hopefully not discover some stuff. But.
Yeah, I was going to run it by hand a couple times too with different numbers just to see, making sure everything was coming out right. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Does your court service center person sort of know where? I mean, you saw it in the email, but did you? I haven't had a chance to.
She's on vacation this week. She kind of, she sort of knows where I was at. I said we're getting to the end of it, but it's going to take a little bit. That was last Friday. I think we last spoke about it. So
the one thing, this is one very tiny thing. So this is again in the when you show things off, people will give you ideas. Just be sure you capture those ideas, but you don't have to do them all like immediately. In those boxes there at the top, box 1, 2, and 3, the check is so closely aligned to where the circle is, it might be hard for some people to see where it is. So if you resize that checkbox or recenter it, that might be useful, just because I'm looking at that and at first I didn't realize it was checked.
It was checked. Yeah, there was a couple other like labeled problems like that I was noticing, just like where it was putting the value. There was some like overlapping. I've re-uploaded the PDF to it a couple times, or the template, and I think it's changed the size of the boxes each time. Every time I've opened it in Document, I've noticed they've gotten a little bigger. So, or at least the latest time, they were way bigger when I opened it, when I tried to look at it again last night. So I don't know why that's happening, but I think that had something to do with these getting larger. So,
But it looks great. I'm very excited also because that went by, you showed us like 5 screens and you said, oh, we can get rid of 3 of these. So I think if you can get to the point where you've gotten rid of 3 by the time we do the show and tell.
Oh, I think so.
More,
yeah, I was hoping to get them all done today, to be honest, before I leave for the weekend. So yeah.
Well, it looks good.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah, cool. I look forward to scheduling something. Caroline, this is adjacent to the stuff you've been working on. Do you have feedback?
It is. I don't have. I only think is that it would be good, and I think you're already going to do this, is to line them up. You know, right. I would put them in the lower right-hand corner of those boxes in general.
Can I tell it where to put the text? Anyway, because I feel like it was going.
I think you can align. Are you using Adobe after
he's using Document, so we might have to
Only
get into
Document.
Adobe. Yeah.
You
maybe
might be able
somebody
to align
before-
with Document.
I was going to say, maybe before you do the final product, somebody could do that for you.
Yeah,
You
you could
and
like
take that over. 'Cause-
queue everything up and then just send it to one of us and we can
Yeah,
do the
and
last
it
bit
would,
of
you know, I
formatting.
mean, if you can, if one of us can do it before the demo, I mean, those are the little things that make it different. I mean, I know you're going to show it to Kristen and she's okay with it, but if you're showing it to anybody else, that's the kind of thing that people get hung up on. You know, it's like the
little
detail.
details, definitely.
Yeah, and that's what they see. You know, I mean,
Yeah, they
Right,
see
'cause
the
you make
problems,
everything else
not
look
the-
easy. Everything
Yeah,
else is like,
well,
oh yeah,
that's
well of course
exactly
it
it.
works. Yeah,
That's
great. I did the
exactly it.
math. Yay.
And the other thing is, I would, I'm happy to make some time to do some plain language editing if you want. If you've pushed us to GitHub, I can do some plain language editing because you have, like you say, you have 5 screens and they're pretty good. But just things like determine is not a best word.
Yeah, and even like gross income, I figured there must have been better ways to talk about money and a couple of different things. It just seemed like it was a little bit.
Some of them
too much.
we might struggle with, but there's some basic ones we can just do very quickly, just to get it, you know, out the door.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Great.
up on GitHub. What I just showed you is all up on GitHub now. So
Under
So if you
the
share the-
assembly line.
Why don't you just
Oh,
share
yeah.
the link back out into the Teams channel?
yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
that's,
right.
hey, no, it's really impressive.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I mean, it took a while. So.
It did, but you, I mean, you really, the thing is, this was your first project and you tackled something difficult.
Yeah. Well, it's
And-
kind of a
and-
second project. He did a difficult thing the first time around, but then
What-
it
I
wasn't a
forgot, what was
priority with the
first
court.
one? I remember that. What was the first one?
It was that internal form, like the notice of appeal form.
He
for
even
Oh,
the-
included adding an upload feature.
Yeah.
That I was going to say it earlier, actually, Bryce, that has a combo box in it. I found out that we have that tool and it was useful somewhere because there's like an other answer for one of the drop downs. So just flag that for y'all.
Okay.
But, yeah, that's not live yet. So
Perfect. Yeah.
A drop down is different from a combo box, but
Yeah, it's like an
yeah,
editable
okay.
drop down,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what's there now because it has the form had a combo box. So I just used that. Just
Yeah.
figured out how to make one.
cool.